The shortcut through Blackwood Forest was a bad idea. Lily knew it the moment the last orange light of sunset vanished behind the trees, swallowed by a deep blue gloom. The path, usually a friendly dirt ribbon by day, was now just a darker line in the shadows. "It's 10 minutes faster," she muttered to herself, gripping her backpack straps. Her friends Sarah and Mia had offered her a ride, but she'd said no, wanting the quiet walk after the noise of the school library. Now, the quiet felt thick and heavy. The first rule of the woods at night was sound. Every rustle of leaves made her heart skip. Every snap of a twig sounded like a footstep. She walked faster, her own breathing loud in her ears. Then came the smell. It cut through the clean scent of pine, a wild musky odour like wet dog and earth, and something sharp like ozone before a storm. Lily froze. Her skin prickled. A low growl vibrated through the air, not from one spot, but from everywhere. It was a sound that felt more in her bones than in her ears. Run. Her brain screamed the command, but her legs were locked. From between two great oak trees, a shadow detached itself. It was huge, a living piece of the night. Moonlight, filtering through the branches, caught 2 points of sickly yellow light where its eyes should be. It moved with a terrifying liquid grace, and then it was on her. So the world became a whirl of dark fur, hot breath, and crushing weight. She hit the ground. The air knocked from her lungs. She couldn't scream. She saw the glint of a muzzle, rows of sharp teeth, but it didn't bite. A massive paw, claws like curved knives, pinned her shoulder. The other swiped, fast as a snake. White-hot pain seared across her left forearm. Not a deep cut, but a burning, stinging scratch. 3 lines of fire. The beast stopped. Those yellow eyes held hers for one endless second. In them she didn't see the mindless rage of an animal. She saw a strange, terrifying intelligence, a recognition. Then with a soft huff of that hot, meaty breath, it was gone. It melted back into the trees as silently as it had come. Lily lay on the cold ground, trembling. The pain in her arm throbbed in time with her frantic heartbeat. Slowly, she pushed herself up. Her jacket sleeve was torn. In the faint moonlight, she could see 3 parallel scratches, welling with beads of dark blood. They didn't look like the ragged tears from a branch. They were clean, precise, and deep enough to scar. Shaking, she stumbled to her feet and ran. She didn't stop running until the trees gave way to the back fences of her neighbourhood, until the streetlights were bright and ugly overhead. At home, she locked the door and leaned against it, gasping. In the bright bathroom light, she examined the wounds. They were already clotting. She cleaned them, wincing at the sting, and wrapped her arm in a bandage. "Just an animal," she whispered to her pale reflection. "A big dog or a coyote. It got scared. It was an accident." She repeated it like a prayer. But as she climbed into bed, the memory of those intelligent yellow eyes wouldn't leave her. And under the bandage, the 3 scratches pulsed with a warm, strange heat that had nothing to do with pain. They itched like something was growing beneath her skin. The scratches healed with a speed that was, in itself, the first true warning. By the 3rd morning, the angry red lines had faded to a tender pink. By the end of the week, when Lily finally peeled the bandage off for good, she was left not with raised, ragged scars, but with 3 delicate silver-white lines. They looked like threads of moonlight stitched just under the skin, too neat, too perfect. They didn't hurt. But when she ran a finger over them, a faint electric hum buzzed up her arm, settling in the pit of her stomach. Then the world began to open up, or rather it began to violently unpack itself upon her. It started with smell. Walking to school on Monday, she was ambushed by a wall of scent so intense it stopped her in her tracks. It wasn't just the lilacs in Mrs. Henderson's yard. It was the damp earth under them, the slow rot of last year's leaves beneath that, the bitter tang of the fertilizer pellets buried near the roots. She could smell the exhaust from a car 3 blocks away, distinct from the oil leak of another. She could smell the sharp, clean soap on a boy who passed her, and underneath it the salty, sweet scent of his skin, and the faint metallic of his nervousness. It was overwhelming. In the school cafeteria, it was a nightmare, a roaring symphony of grease, sour milk, sweat, perfume, and the cloying sweetness of ketchup. She had to breathe through her mouth, her head swimming. Next was sound. The whispered gossip 2 rows over in history class wasn't a background murmur. It was as clear as if the girls were speaking directly into her ear. And then he said he'd call, but she could hear the scratch of every pencil, the rustle of every sweatshirt, the frantic, rapid heartbeat of the boy giving a presentation at the front of the room. The constant hum of the fluorescent lights was a maddening, high-pitched whine that drilled into her skull. She started wearing earbuds, no music playing, just to dull the barrage. But the most frightening changes were inside her. Her emotions, once manageable currents, had become riptides. A flash of annoyance at a slow-moving crowd in the hallway spiked into a hot, blinding rage that made her vision sharpen and her teeth ache. It took all her willpower to just stand still, fists clenched until it ebbed, leaving her shaky and ashamed. Conversely, Sarah's funny story at lunch sparked a giddiness so intense it felt like bubbles were fizzing in her veins, a laughter so forceful it bordered on hysterical. She saw the flicker of concern in her friend's eyes and forced herself to calm down, the effort exhausting. And then there was the pull. It was a physical sensation, a hollow, yearning tug deep in her chest, right behind her sternum. It was quiet during the day, a faint, restless ache, but as dusk fell, it would awaken. When the moon rose, a waxing gibbous in the sky, growing fatter each night, it became a persistent thrum, a compass needle pointing relentlessly toward the dark line of Blackwood Forest. It wasn't a voice, but a summons written in her bones. Some nights she'd catch herself standing at her bedroom window, her forehead pressed to the cool glass, staring at the woods, her whole body yearning for the tree line. She'd have to physically shake herself, stepping back as if from a cliff's edge. She was fragmenting. The Lily who loved quiet libraries and movie nights was being crowded out by this new raw creature of sensation and impulse. She found herself avoiding her friends, their normal concerns about tests and boy bands feeling trivial and distant. She was irritable, snapping at her mom over a misplaced water glass, then nearly crying at the hurt on her mother's face. One afternoon, seeking solace in the familiar, she hid in the musty peace of the school library's back stacks. She was looking for a book on local wildlife, a desperate, rational part of her still hoping to find a logical explanation. A rare wildcat, a diseased bear. As she reached for a heavy volume, her sleeve rode up. The boy shelving books across the aisle, Ben from her chemistry class, glanced over. His eyes caught on the silver marks on her forearm. He didn't say anything, but his scent, it changed. Lily froze. A new, complex cocktail of scent bloomed in the air around him, the sharp green smell of curiosity, the warmer, earthy note of concern, and then unmistakably the coppery, sour tang of fear. He was afraid of her scars. A low, instinctive sound almost rose in her throat, not a growl, but a vibration of warning. She swallowed it down, her own fear now sour in her mouth. She yanked her sleeve down, grabbed a random book, and fled. That night, under the cool light of the nearing full moon, Lily sat on her bed and stared at the 3 silver lines. They seemed to glow with their own faint light. The pull in her chest was a steady, drumming beat. Come, come, come. This was no longer about healing scratches or a strange encounter. Something had been planted in her that night in the woods. It had taken root. It was growing, changing her from the inside out, and it was hungry for the moonlight. The human life she knew was slipping through her fingers like sand, and she had no idea how to hold on. She was no longer just Lily, she was becoming something else. And the terrifying truth was, part of her was starting to like the sharp, vivid clarity of this new world, even as it terrified her. The library had always been Lily's sanctuary. The quiet, the smell of old paper and dust, the sense of ordered knowledge. It was a world that made sense. Now she moved through it like a ghost, a hunter in a sacred space. She wasn't here for a school project. She was here for a diagnosis. She started with the obvious, the rational, medical books. Rapid tissue regeneration, unusual dermatological markings, hyperacute sensory perception. The clinical terms swam before her eyes, none of it fit. They spoke of disorders, of tumours on the pituitary gland, of rare genetic syndromes. They did not explain the silver scars that hummed under her skin, or the way she could taste the rain coming hours before the sky darkened. Frustration was a hot, tight coil in her chest. She forced it down, the new instinct threatening to flare. She had to look elsewhere. She moved to the oldest section of the town library, a corner rarely visited, where the air was colder and the light from the narrow window was weak. Here lived the local histories, the collections of folklore, the forgotten journals of Blackwood's founders. The books were thick with dust, their spines cracked. Her first breakthrough was in a yellowed, leather-bound volume titled Accounts and Oddities of the Northern Woods, 1887. The spidery cursive was hard to read. It spoke of shadow walkers and moon-touched beasts. Most of it was superstitious nonsense about lost livestock. But one passage, near the bottom of a page, made her blood run cold. And the beast, it is said, does not always seek to devour. At times it seeks to claim. The bite is for the pack, a making of kin. But the claw is a different mark. It is a brand, a tether. It binds the human soul not to the beast's belly, but to the beast's will. They are called the marked, those who walk in two worlds belonging fully to neither, their fate tied to the moon and the one who scarred them. Lily's breath hitched. The claw, a tether, the marked. She read it again, her finger tracing the words. It was a story, a folk tale. But it was her story, the scratches, not bites, the connection, the pull. She spent hours, days, returning after school. She found snippets in other places. A German compendium of mythical creatures had an entry on Gezeichnete, the signed ones, humans marked by a werewolf to serve as familiars or future mates. A book of Appalachian tales spoke of a haint wolf that could tie a person's spirit to its own with a single swipe, making them a moon chaser. The pieces assembled into a terrifying mosaic. The bite was transformation, a violent rebirth into the wolf. The scratch, something subtler, slower. It was an infusion, a contamination of the human spirit with the wolf's essence. It was a claim of ownership, a psychic leash. The marked one gained the heightened senses, the primal emotions, the lunar pull, but not the full change. They were caught in the in-between. The final, crushing piece came from a crumbling pamphlet on regional folklore. It was a single, stark sentence. The bond of the mark is for life, broken only by the death of one or the other. Lily closed the book softly. The sound was final. The weak afternoon light from the window fell across her hands, but she felt no warmth. All the frantic hope for a medical explanation, for a mistake, evaporated. This was not a disease. This was magic. This was curse. This was fact. She was marked. The word echoed in the silent library. It explained everything, the silver scars, the supernatural senses, the tidal pull toward the woods, the fevered emotions. She was not sick. She was claimed. Her humanity was being quietly, relentlessly overwritten by something ancient and wild. She was tied, soul deep, to the creature with the yellow eyes. Her fate was no longer her own. A profound loneliness, colder than any she had ever known, settled over her. Who could she tell? Her mom would think she'd lost her mind. Her friends would be terrified. The doctors would lock her away. She was utterly, completely alone with this truth. The pull in her chest gave a sudden, sharp throb, as if in agreement. It was time to go. The sun was setting. The library was closing. The moon was waiting. Lily gathered the old books, her movements slow and deliberate. She reshelved them in the dark corner, burying the truth back in the dust. She walked out of the library, but she left the last remnants of her ordinary, unknowing self behind among the silent stacks. She now carried the weight of the knowledge, and it was heavier than any book. She knew what she was. The only question left was what she would become. The pull was no longer a suggestion. It was a command. The night of the full moon was a living pressure inside Lily's ribs, a thick golden rope cinched tight around her heart, tugging her relentlessly toward the woods. It was a physical ache, a longing so deep it felt like homesickness for a place she'd never been. The rational part of her, the part that still remembered library books and physics homework, screamed in protest. It was madness, it was suicide. But the new part of her, the part that thrummed with the moon's frequency, knew it was inevitable. She waited until her house was dark and still. Slipping out her window was disturbingly easy. Her movements were silent, her balance perfect. The cool night air wasn't just felt on her skin. She drank it. It was a complex bouquet of damp soil, night-blooming jasmine, the musky scent of a raccoon in a nearby drainpipe, and beneath it all, the clear, cold, metallic scent of the moon itself. She didn't think. She followed the pull. It led her unerringly back into Blackwood Forest, not by the path, but straight through the underbrush. Thorns that should have snagged her clothes seemed to slide away. Fallen branches were avoided with a dancer's instinct. The forest was not an obstacle, It was a welcoming hallway. She emerged into the same moon-drenched clearing where, weeks before, she had been pinned by terror. Now, the terror was still there, but it was laced with a terrifying sense of rightness. The clearing was a pool of silver light, the grass shining like mercury. He was there, not as the monster, but as a man. He stood at the far edge of the clearing, leaning against a great oak, his form silhouetted against the lesser darkness of the trees. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in simple dark clothes. As she stepped into the light, he pushed off the tree and moved toward her. Her senses went into a wild overdrive. His scent hit her first, pine and cold stone, wild thyme, and that underlying potent wildness, the scent of the beast, but folded in, controlled. It was the smell from the night of the attack, refined, made personal. Her hearing picked up the steady, powerful rhythm of his heart, slower than a human's. And her eyes, she could see him with a preternatural clarity, even in the moonlight. The sharp angles of his face, the tousled dark hair, the intensity of his gaze, which, as he neared, she saw was not yellow, but a deep, watchful amber. He stopped a few feet away, his expression unreadable. He didn't seem surprised to see her. "Lily," he said. His voice was low, gravelled, as if used to quieter conversations. Hearing her name in that voice, in this place, was a shock. "How do you know my name?" "I've been watching," he said simply, no apology in his tone. "Since that night, you needed to come here on your own. You had to feel the call and answer it." "The call," she echoed, the words tasting bitter. "You mean this?" She pressed a fist against the ache in her chest. He nodded. "The tether, it's strongest under the full moon. It will always bring you to me when I allow it." "When I allow it?" The ownership in the phrase made her flinch. "What did you do to me?" He was silent for a long moment, his amber eyes tracking over her face, seeing too much. "Something I did not intend," he said finally, and a flicker of something, regret, frustration, passed over his features. "I was not in control that night. The moon was nearing full, and a rival's scent was in my territory. I was all beast, all rage. You were just there, in my path." He took a step closer, and she held her ground, though every instinct shrieked. "The claw is a claim, Lily, not a bite. A bite is for making another wolf. A claw mark. It's for binding a human to the wolf's world. It's an old magic, a selfish one." The confirmation of the library's law was a cold stone in her gut. "So I'm your, what, prisoner, pet?" A low rumble, almost a growl, escaped him, but it sounded more like annoyance than threat. "You are marked. You are connected to me. Your senses, your instincts, your tie to the lunar cycle, they come from me. They are a part of my nature, bleeding into yours. Can you take it back?" The plea was out before she could stop it, laced with a desperation she hated. He shook his head, a single definitive motion. "No, it is a seal. It can only be broken by death, my death or yours." The finality of it stole the air from her lungs. This was forever. "What happens now?" Her voice was small in the vast, silent clearing. "Now," he said, his gaze holding hers, "the change in you will only deepen. The feelings will get stronger. The pull, more insistent. You'll start to hear the thoughts of animals, the whispers of the trees. Your human emotions will feel like faint echoes compared to what runs in your blood." He paused. "You can fight it. You can try to live your human life, smothering it all. It will be a constant war, and you will be miserable, and eventually you will lose." "Or," she whispered. "Or," he said, and for the first time, his voice softened, just a fraction. "You can learn. You can understand what is happening to you. You can learn control, so the world isn't a bombardment, so your anger doesn't control you, so the moon is a guide, not a master." He looked away, toward the distant hills. "I owe you that much. I did this. The least I can do is try to help you bear it." The offer hung in the air between them, fragile and dangerous. This was the creature that had torn her life apart, and he was her only possible guide through the wreckage. The moon beat down on them, a silent witness. The pull in her chest was a steady, reassuring thrum now, a connection made physical. She was terrified. She was furious. But she was also, for the first time since the scratches healed, not completely alone with the terror. "What's your name?" she asked, not agreeing, not accepting, but needing to know. He looked back at her, the ghost of something not quite a smile touching his mouth. "Kael." "Kael," she repeated. The name felt heavy, significant. He nodded once. "When you're ready, when the confusion becomes too much, or the fear, come to the edge of the woods. I'll find you." He turned to leave, melting back toward the trees. "Wait," Lily called out, the word tearing from her. He paused. "Why? Why would you help me?" He didn't look back, his profile sharp against the darkness. "Because a marked human who doesn't understand what they are," he said, his voice low and serious, "is the most dangerous thing in these woods, to themselves and to everyone around them." And then he was gone, leaving her alone in the silver clearing, the truth of his warning settling around her shoulders, colder than the moonlight. She had met the source of her curse, and he had given her a choice: drown in the strange new current, or let him teach her to swim. Neither option felt like freedom. The morning after the clearing, Lily felt split in two. The girl who had spoken to a werewolf under the full moon felt like a character from a dream, vivid but distant. The girl staring at her tired reflection in the bathroom mirror, trying to cover the faint silver lines with a thick coat of concealer, was achingly, mundanely real. The makeup smelled like chemicals and clay, a harsh mask over skin that now craved the feel of open air. School was an exercise in sensory torture and emotional whiplash. The fluorescent lights weren't just bright, they screamed. The bell at the end of period was a physical jolt to her system. She could smell the lingering ghost of Kael's pine and stone scent on her own skin, a phantom reminder that refused to wash away. And it clashed violently with the cheap detergent on the football team's jerseys and the sugary cloud of perfume from the girls' bathroom. Her friends were a lifeline she couldn't properly grasp. "Lily, you are totally zoned out," Sarah said, waving a fry in front of her face at lunch. The scent of grease and salt was overpowering. "Earth to Lily, did you even hear about the party at Jake's this weekend?" Lily blinked, forcing her focus to Sarah's face. She could hear the double-time rhythm of Mia's heartbeat, a nervous staccato under her chatter about a college tour. She could see the tiny, worried crease between Sarah's eyebrows, the one that appeared when she was concerned, but trying to play it cool. "Sorry," Lily mumbled, pushing her own uneaten food around the tray. "Just stressed. AP Bio is killing me." The lie was ash in her mouth. AP Bio was a soothing puzzle of amino acids and cell structures, a world of logic that made sense. Her real stress was the feral cat she could hear yowling 3 blocks away, a sound that resonated with the new restless energy in her own bones. "You've been stressed for weeks," Mia said gently, reaching out to touch Lily's arm. Lily flinched. It was a tiny, involuntary movement, but Mia's hand froze, her scent shifting into a wounded confusion. The new Lily's instincts had reacted to the sudden contact as a potential threat. The old Lily wanted to cry. "See?" Sarah said, her voice losing its playful edge. "You're jumpy, you're not sleeping, you keep smelling the air like you're lost. What's going on?" The direct question was a trap. Lily looked at their faces. Open, caring, human. How could she possibly map the truth onto this normal table in this noisy cafeteria? "Oh, you know, a werewolf marked me as his property. My senses are dialed up to 1,000,000, and I feel the moon pulling on my soul like a magnet." "Pass the ketchup." "I don't know," she said, and that at least was partially true. "Just a lot of family stuff. Mom's on my case." "It's nothing." The lie created a visible wall. She saw it go up in their eyes, a polite, concerned withdrawal. They wanted to help, but she was giving them nothing to hold on to. The gap between them, once a crack, was now a canyon, and she was the one digging it deeper. The war inside her peaked in Mr. Henderson's history class. A boy behind her, Kael, was relentlessly tapping his pen. Tap, 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 tap. To everyone else, it was an annoyance. To Lily, it was a jackhammer against her skull, each tap sinking with a throbbing vein in her temple. The low-grade irritation she should have felt ignited into a geyser of pure red rage. Without thinking, she spun in her seat. "Will you stop that?" Her voice wasn't a normal complaint. It was a low, guttural snarl that carried to the front of the room. The class went silent. Kael stared, pen frozen, his face a mask of shock. Mr. Henderson paused his lecture. The scent of Kael's sudden, sharp fear, sour and electric, flooded Lily's nose. It should have disgusted her. Instead, for a terrifying second, it satisfied something primal. The rage receded as quickly as it had come, leaving behind a cold, sick shame. "Miss Vance," Mr. Henderson said, his tone carefully neutral. "Is there a problem?" "No, sir," she whispered, turning back around, her face burning. She could feel the stares, hear the renewed, hushed whispers. Did you hear her voice? "What's her problem?" She was the problem. She was a grenade with the pin pulled, trying to pretend she was still a paperweight. That evening at home, the final fracture appeared. Her mother asked her to set the table. Lily, distracted by the distant, melodious howl of a train whistle that sounded eerily like a call, reached for a glass. Her new strength, unpredictable and surging, betrayed her. Her fingers closed too hard, the glass shattered in her grip. She stood there stunned, a large jagged shard in her palm, not even cut. Her mother gasped, rushing over. "Lily, your hand!" "I'm fine," Lily said, her voice hollow. She opened her palm. The skin was unbroken, not even a red mark. The glass had simply given way. Her mother stared at her unmarked hand, then at the shattered crystal on the floor, then at her daughter's face. The confusion in her eyes was deepening into something else. A dawning, frightened realization that the changes in her daughter were not just teenage moodiness. "It was already cracked," Lily lied, the words automatic now. "I felt it give." She helped clean up the mess, her mother silent and watchful. The domestic scene, sweeping shards into a dustpan, the soft clink of broken pieces, was a painful pantomime of their old life. Lily knew she was failing at it. She was a bad actor in the role of her own daughter. Later, in her room, she stood at the window. The moon was a waning gibbous now, but the pull was still there, a persistent ache. She looked out at the dark shape of Blackwood. In there was madness, danger, and a creature who had destroyed her life. But in there was also the only one who didn't look at her with confusion or fear. In there was an explanation for the strength in her hands, the fire in her blood, the animal listening in the silence. Her human life wasn't just slipping away, it was becoming a costume that no longer fit, itchy and constricting, and with every lie, every flinch, every shattered glass, she felt the costume tear a little more. The path ahead forked violently. One led deeper into the painful pantomime of normalcy, a life of constant suppression and isolation. The other led into the dark woods toward the source of her agony, and the only being who spoke her new, terrifying language. 3 days after the shattered glass, Lily broke. It was a small thing, a song on the radio in her mother's car, a sweet nostalgic tune from her childhood. The melody, which should have brought a warm ache of memory, instead hit at a raw, exposed nerve. A wave of sorrow, so vast and sudden that it had no human origin, crashed over her. It was the sorrow of ancient trees, of lost migration paths, of empty dens. It was a wolf's lament woven into a pop song. She began to cry, silent, wrenching sobs she couldn't explain, her mother shooting her increasingly alarmed glances. She couldn't live like this. She was drowning in a sea no one else could perceive. That afternoon, she didn't go home. She walked to the edge of Blackwood Forest, where the last neat lawn met the first wild tangle of undergrowth. She stood there, the ache in her chest a physical guide wire. She didn't call out. She simply stood and let the confusion and fear radiate from her like a beacon. He was there within minutes. Kael emerged from the trees as silently as fog, his amber eyes taking her in. She was a mess, pale, eyes red-rimmed, her hands clenched into trembling fists at her sides. She smelled of salt, human soap, and sheer undiluted panic. "It's too much," she gasped, the words tearing free. I can't filter any of it. It's all just noise. And the feelings, they aren't mine." He nodded, as if he'd been expecting this. "They are yours now," he said, his voice low and steady, a rock in the torrent of her senses. "But they're coming through a new channel, one you don't know how to tune. You're trying to listen to everything at full volume." He gestured with his head. "Come in, just to the edge." Hesitantly, she took a few steps into the dappled shade. The moment she crossed the tree line, the overwhelming cacophony of the town, the distant traffic, the shouting kids, the electric hum of power lines, muffled. It was still there, but it was background. Here the sounds were organic, wind in leaves, a woodpecker's distant drumming, the scuttle of insects. It was still intense, but it was a language she felt, inexplicably, she was meant to understand. "Lesson 1, Kael said, standing a respectful distance away. "Breathing is not just for air, it's for scent. You're drowning in information. You need to learn to choose a single stream." He instructed her to close her eyes. "Tell me what you smell." "Everything," she whispered desperately. "Wet leaves, pine, your smell, mildew, a dead mouse over there, my own shampoo, dirt, pollen. Stop." His voice was a gentle command. "One. Choose one. The pine. Follow just the pine. Block out the rest. Breathe it in, trace it. Is it on the air? Is it on the bark of a specific tree? Is it from the needles underfoot? It was agonizingly difficult. The other scents clamoured for attention like shouting children, but she tried. She inhaled slowly, trying to isolate the clean, sharp ribbon of pine resin. She pointed a shaky hand to her left. That tree, the big one with the broken lower branch. It's strongest there. A pause. Good, he said, and the simple word of praise sent an unwarranted flicker of warmth through her chilled fear. Now sound. Listen to the wind. Only the wind in the leaves, not the birds, not the creek. Just the wind. This was harder. Sound felt more invasive. But she focused, straining to separate the soft, rushing sigh of the breeze through the canopy from the other layers. It was like tuning a radio dial through static, searching for one clear station. For a few precious seconds, she found it, just the endless gentle whisper above. The tension in her jaw eased slightly. The emotions, she said, opening her eyes, the panic rising again, the anger, it comes out of nowhere. Kael's expression grew more serious. That is the wolf's blood in you. It's a protector. But right now, it's a guard dog that thinks every passerby is a threat. You have to be its master. He took a step closer and she forced herself not to retreat. The anger is a fire. You are trying to smother it. That only makes it explode. You must bank it, control its heat. How, she pleaded. Feel it rising. The heat in your chest, the sharpness in your vision. Don't fight it. Acknowledge it. Then give it a shape. Push it down into your hands, your feet. Ground it. Imagine it flowing out of you and into the earth. He demonstrated, closing his own eyes, his powerful frame, which always seemed thrumming with latent energy, visibly settled, becoming still as the ancient trees around them. The earth can take it. Your human world cannot. They practiced for an hour. She would focus on a single scent until she could identify its source and age. She would listen to a single creature's movement until she could picture its path. And when a flash of irritation sparked at her own frustration, she tried his method, feeling the heat, picturing it as a molten stream flowing down through her legs and dissipating into the cool, dark soil. It wasn't perfect. She lost focus constantly. The world would crash back in, overwhelming her. But for moments, precious, quiet moments, she had control. The noise receded. The fire banked. As the sun began to dip, painting the woods in long golden stripes, she felt a fatigue deeper than any from human exertion. It was a mental and spiritual exhaustion. Kael watched her, his head tilted. This is the debt, he said quietly. I gave you this curse. The least I can do is give you the tools to carry it. The word debt felt cold, transactional, but the act of teaching felt like something else. It felt like responsibility. Will it ever get easier? She asked, her voice small. Yes, he said, and no, the sensations won't lessen, but your ability to manage them will grow. You will learn to walk in both worlds without breaking. He looked toward the setting sun. Go home now. Practice. When the world gets loud, find one sound. When the scents overwhelm, find one thread. When the fire rises, ground it. Lily turned to leave, pausing at the very edge of the woods. She looked back. He was already fading into the deeper shadows that are part of the forest itself. Thank you, she said, the words surprising her. From the gloom, his amber eyes glinted once, a silent acknowledgement. The walk home was different. The town's noise was still a wall, but she didn't try to take it all in. She picked a single stream, the sound of her own footsteps on the pavement, and followed it. The panic remained at bay. It was the first small victory she'd had in weeks. It was a fragile raft in a stormy sea, but for now, it was enough to keep her from sinking. She had met her monster, and he had given her her first weapon, a moment of quiet. The lessons became a secret lifeline. Twice a week, Lily would slip to the forest's edge, and Kael would be there. He was a stern, patient teacher. There was no small talk, no reassurance about her old life. His world was one of instinct and survival, and that was the curriculum. He taught her to track not by sight, but by the layered story of scent on the wind. He taught her to move silently, want her weight distributed like falling snow. She learned to differentiate between the benign curiosity of a deer and the focused intent of a predator. Her body grew stronger, her reflexes quicker, but the most profound change was happening inside her skull. The chaotic roar of the world was slowly, painstakingly, being partitioned into manageable channels. One Tuesday, walking home from school, the new skill presented her with a puzzle. The air in her neighbourhood was its usual tapestry of cut grass, grill smoke and car exhaust, but woven through it was a new thread. A sweet smell, cloying and thick like rotting honeysuckle and wet fur. It was wrong. It set her teeth on edge and raised the fine hairs on her arms. She stopped, nostrils flaring, trying to isolate it. It was coming from the alley behind the old hardware store. The wolf instinct in her, the one she was learning to communicate with, didn't just recoil, it snarled. A silent internal warning that screamed threat. She pushed the feeling down, grounding it as Kael had taught her, and hurried home. But the smell lingered in her memory, a stain on the air. The next evening at the edge of the woods she mentioned it. There's this smell in town, sickly sweet, like flowers and something dead. Kael, who had been demonstrating how to listen for the heartbeat of a burrowing animal, went utterly still. The casual, instructive air around him vanished, replaced by a tension as tight as a drawn bowstring. The amber of his eyes seemed to harden into something darker, more predatory. Where? The word was a low growl. Behind the hardware store on Elm. Why? What is it? He turned away from her, his gaze scanning the darkening trees as if expecting an attack. It's the Greyborn pack, he said, the name a curse. They've been pushing at the edges of my territory for months. Another? Pack? The word felt foreign and terrifying. There was more than one of him? They are not like me, Kael said, and there was a ferocity in his voice she hadn't heard since the night in the clearing. They revel in the beast. They see humans as prey or playthings. They hunt for sport, not sustenance. They would see a town like yours not as a place to avoid, but as a larder. A cold dread pooled in Lily's stomach. What does that have to do with the smell? He finally looked back at her, and his expression was grave. That scent is their marker, a challenge and a warning to anything they consider lesser. He took a step toward her, his intensity pinning her in place. You, Lily. They would consider an abomination, a human touched by the moon but not fully turned. To them, you are neither wolf nor human. You are a weak thing, a flawed creation. The words were a slap. Why? I've done nothing to them. Your existence is the offence, he said, his voice flat. You are proof that the line between our world and yours can be blurred without total surrender. They despise that. They would either try to kill you to cleanse the bloodline, or, he hesitated, or they would try to take you, to break you and force the full change, making you a feral, obedient puppet in their pack, a trophy. The world seemed to tilt. The danger was no longer an abstract internal struggle. It had a scent, it had a name, it was real, and it was hunting in her town. I thought you said the mark was for protection, she whispered, fear making her voice thin. That I was. Claimed. The mark is a claim, he corrected sharply. It is a statement. She is mine. To a rival, that is not protection. It is a provocation. It makes you a target. By marking you, I made you part of this war. A shadow of the guilt she'd seen before crossed his face, quickly buried. You must be vigilant. That scent is your enemy. If you catch it near your home, near your school, you run. You come here. Do not try to face it. Do you understand? She nodded, numb. The fragile sense of control she'd been building crumbled. Her safe spaces were gone. School, home, the walk between. They were now potential hunting grounds. What do they want? She asked. Territory, power, the thrill of the hunt, Kael said, his gaze returning to the woods. My territory is old, and it is rich. They want it, and you. He looked at her, and for a fleeting second, she saw not her teacher, but the calculating alpha. You are a vulnerability, a way to get to me. The final piece clicked into place with a horrifying clarity. She wasn't just a victim of circumstance. She was a pawn. Her life was now tied not only to the moon and Kael's will, but to a territorial dispute between monsters. The lesson was over. The forest, once a place of difficult learning, now felt like the only fortress. But even its walls, she understood, were not impenetrable. Go straight home, Kael ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. Be watchful. Trust your nose. It will warn you before your eyes ever do. Lily walked back, but it wasn't a walk anymore. It was a reconnaissance mission. Every shadow in an alley was a potential ambush. Every shift in the wind was analysed for that cloying, rotten sweet poison. The predator she was learning to understand within herself was now screaming about predators outside. She arrived home, locking the door behind her, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She looked out her kitchen window at the quiet, oblivious street. The scent of danger was out there, a stain on her world. The mark on her arm didn't feel like a connection anymore. It felt like a brand painting a target on her back for every beast in the dark. The war had come to her doorstep. Vigilance became a new layer of Lily's existence, a constant low-grade hum beneath her practiced control. The cloying sweet rot scent of the Greyborn pack became her personal bogeyman, a phantom she hunted with her nose more than her eyes. She smelled it twice more, once near the gas station on the edge of town, and another time, chillingly, in the grassy field behind her school during a pep rally. But it was always a ghost, a lingering trace on the air, gone before she could pinpoint its source. The tension was a wire pulled tighter each day. Then, on a moonless Thursday night, the wire snapped. Lily had stayed late at the library, chasing a normalcy that now felt like a disguise. The walk home took her past the back of the town's abandoned movie theatre, a place of crumbling brick and deep, inky shadows where the streetlights didn't reach. She'd almost passed it when the wind shifted. The smell hit her like a physical blow, thick, fresh, and overwhelmingly close. Not a trace, a presence. She froze, her blood turning to ice water. Run. Kael's command echoed in her head, but her feet were rooted. From the deepest pool of shadow by the theatre's rear exit, 3 figures detached themselves. They moved like men, but wrong. Their postures were slouched, predatory, their movements a study in contained violence. The one in front was tall and lean, with greasy hair and a smile that showed too many teeth. His eyes, even in the dark, held a yellowish glint. The 2 flanking him were bulkier, their silence more menacing. Well, well, the leader drawled, his voice a rough scrape. The little marked bird out past her curfew. He inhaled deeply, theatrically. Smell that, boys? Moon-touched, but soft. So human. Lily's new instincts screamed in a chorus of terror. Every scent off them was aggression, hunger, and a sickening, sugary decay. She took a step back. Don't be shy, he crooned, taking a step forward. We've been watching you. Pretty thing, tangled up with the lone wolf. He always did have a taste for the fragile ones. Stay away from me, Lily said, her voice trembling despite her effort to ground the fire of her fear. The leader laughed, a sound like gravel grinding. Or what? You'll cry for your keeper? He's not here, little Mark. This is our town now. His eyes gleamed. See, Kael thinks a claim is enough. We believe in initiation. We can finish what he started. Scratch you up proper. Make you a real wolf. One of us. Wouldn't you like to be strong? To stop feeling so scared all the time? His words were a venomous echo of her own secret thoughts. The part of her that hated the weakness, the in-betweenness, twitched in response. She shoved it down. I'm not going with you. The leader's smile vanished. Wasn't asking. He nodded to his packmates. The 2 larger ones lunged. Lily's training kicked in. Not to fight, but to flee. She twisted, but a meaty hand caught her backpack, yanking her off balance. She stumbled, the world tilting. The leader advanced, his hand extending, fingers curling like talons. Then the night erupted. A blur of darker shadow, moving with impossible speed, slammed into the leader from the side, sending him crashing into the brick wall with a sickening crunch. The roar that tore through the alley was pure, undiluted fury, a sound that had no place in the human world. It was the sound from the forest, given form. Kael. He stood between Lily and the pack, no longer a man but a conduit of wrath. He wasn't transformed, but he seemed larger, a primal energy radiating from him in waves. His eyes were molten gold in the dark, fixed on the Greyborn leader who was pushing himself up, snarling. You trespass. Kael's voice was guttural, let each word an avalanche. You touch what is mine, and you die. The 2 packmates hesitated, the scent of their own fear now souring the air, cutting through the cloying sweetness. The leader wiped blood from his lip, his snarl turning into a grimace. The pup has teeth. This isn't over, lone wolf. The girl is a weakness. We'll find her when you're not here to hide behind. Then you will find only your death, Kael promised, the words final and cold. For a long, charged moment, the alley crackled with violence. Then, with a final hateful glare at Lily, the Greyborn leader jerked his head. The 3 melted back into the shadows from which they came, their scent fading like a bad dream. Silence rushed back in, broken only by Lily's ragged breathing. She was shaking, the adrenaline crash making her knees weak. Kael turned slowly. The fury was still in his eyes, but it was receding, banked once more. He looked her over, a quick, assessing glance. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, unable to speak. He stepped closer, and for the first time she saw the cost. A long, shallow scratch raked across his bicep, dark blood welling. He'd been hurt protecting her. "You didn't run," he said, and there was no praise in it. It was an accusation. I tried. We're too fast." He stared down at her, his expression unreadable. The alley felt suddenly small, charged with the aftermath of violence and his overwhelming presence. "This is what the mark is, Lily," he said, his voice low and harsh. "It is a claim. It is not a shield. It does not make you safe. It makes you mine. And in our world, that makes you a target. It makes you a piece in a game you don't yet know how to play." He gestured to the empty, dark mouth of the alley where the rival pack had vanished. "They will be back. They now know for certain you are a vulnerability. You cannot simply learn control anymore. Control will not save you from their teeth." The truth was a cold stone in her gut. The lessons in the forest, the focus exercises, they were for managing a condition. They were not for surviving a war. "What do I do?" The question was a whisper. Kael's gaze was relentless. "You choose. You can go back to your human life, pretend this never happened, and you will live in constant fear looking over your shoulder until the night they finally catch you alone. Or..." He paused, the word hanging heavy in the air. "You stop being the claim. You stop being the weak, marked human they see. You learn to be something else. You learn to be strong. You learn to be dangerous. You embrace the part of you that is wolf, not to become one of them, but to protect the part of you that is human." He was offering her not just survival, but a path to power, a terrifying, irrevocable path. "This is the true debt," he said, looking at his own bleeding arm, then back at her. "I can give you the tools to defend what is mine. But you have to want them. You have to be willing to leave the girl in the library behind." Lily looked from his fierce, wounded face to the dark alley, still smelling of violence and fear. The choice was no longer between normalcy and understanding. It was between being prey and learning to be something that could fight back. The moon, hidden behind clouds, seemed to pulse in time with the silver scars on her arm. The claim had been made. Now she had to decide what it would mean. The days after the attack were a strange, suspended quiet. Lily moved through her routines, school-home meals, like a ghost haunting her own life. Every familiar sight was now overlaid with a terrifying new context. The alley behind the theatre was no longer just a shortcut, it was an ambush site. The woods were no longer a place of fearful mystery, they were a fortress and a training ground, and her friends. Sarah found her staring blankly at her locker, her fingers absently tracing the raised silver lines on her forearm, now permanently uncovered. The concealer had been abandoned. The marks were a fact. "Lily," Sarah said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. This time, Lily didn't flinch. She turned, meeting her friend's worried gaze. She could smell Sarah's scent. Lavender laundry detergent, strawberry lip gloss, and underneath, the warm, milky scent of deep concern, laced with a faint, acrid thread of confusion. She could hear the elevated, fluttery rhythm of her heart. This person, this kind, normal human, loved her, and Lily was about to break her heart. "Let's skip last period," Lily said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Go to the park." They sat on their usual bench by the duck pond, a place of 1,000 shared secrets and laughs. Today, the silence between them was a chasm. "You're scaring me," Sarah finally whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "You're different, and it's not just sad different. It's like you're made of glass and lightning. One minute you're a million miles away, the next you're so intense it's hard to look at you. And those scars, they're not from a branch, are they?" Lily looked at the silver lines. In the sunlight, they really did look like captured moonlight. "No," she said, "they're not." She couldn't tell the truth, not the monstrous, impossible truth, but she could stop lying. She could give Sarah a version that honoured their friendship, even as she ended it. "Something happened to me, Sarah. That night I was late coming home a few weeks ago. I was attacked." She saw Sarah's face go pale. "Like that. Not like that. Not by a person, by an animal, something wild. It was close enough to ache, and it changed me. It did something. I'm not sick, but I'm not who I was. My senses, my emotions, everything is sharper, louder, harder to control." "You have to tell someone," Sarah insisted, grabbing her hand. A doctor, the police. They can't help, Lily said, and the finality in her voice silenced Sarah. This isn't something medicine or laws can fix. It's in me now. And because of it, I'm in danger, a different kind of danger. Sarah stared at her, trying to pass the impossible. What are you saying? I'm saying I have to go away, Lily said, the words like stones in her throat. Not from town, but from this. She gestured between them at the bench, the pond, the whole world of homework and weekend plans. The person who attacked me, there are others like it. They're dangerous and they're interested in me now. Staying close to you, to Mia, to my mom, it puts you all in danger. And trying to live this life, she looked around at the normal, sun-dappled park, is killing me. I'm fighting myself every second and I'm losing. Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. So that's it? You're just giving up on us, on everything? I'm choosing. Lily corrected, a hard edge entering her voice, born of sleepless nights and alleyway terrors. I'm choosing not to be a victim anymore. I'm choosing to learn how to survive what I've become. The girl who sat here with you, who worried about tests and parties, she can't survive what's coming. I have to become someone else. The truth of it hung in the air, brutal and undeniable. Lily saw the moment Sarah understood that this wasn't a phase or a secret that would pass. This was a goodbye. Sarah threw her arms around Lily, holding her in a fierce, desperate hug. Lily hugged her back, breathing in the beloved human scent of her best friend for what she knew would be the last time. I'll always love you, Sarah sobbed into her shoulder. Whatever you are, whoever you have to be. I love you too, Lily whispered, her own eyes dry and burning. The part of her that was still human wept inside, a silent, desolate storm. The part that was becoming something else was already looking toward the tree line at the edge of the park, feeling the familiar, grounding pull. That night, as the nearly full moon rose, bathing the world in cool silver, Lily went to the clearing. Kael was already there, waiting, a still and watchful silhouette. He didn't ask if she was ready, he simply watched her approach. Lily stopped before him. She felt stripped bare, hollowed out by the goodbye, but also strangely solid. The path of denial was gone, burned away. I choose, she said, her voice clear in the silent clearing. It didn't echo, but was absorbed by the ancient trees, as if they were witnessing a vow. I will not be the weak link. I will not be the claim they can use against you, or the victim they can snatch from an alley. Teach me, not just to control it, teach me to use it, teach me to be strong, teach me to be dangerous. Kael studied her face for a long moment, looking for doubt, for hesitation. He found none. He saw only the resolve forged in fear and grief, and a fierce, newfound will to survive. A slow nod. The training begins now. It will not be lessons. It will be forging. It will hurt. You will want to quit. You will hate me. I understand, Lily said. Then tomorrow at dusk, we start with a hunt. He turned to leave, but Lily spoke again. Kael. He paused. Thank you for the offer, for the choice. He glanced back, the moonlight sharp on the angles of his face. Do not thank me yet, he said. You have just chosen the harder path. The human world was a gilded cage. This world is just the wild, and the wild does not forgive. He disappeared into the trees. Lily stood alone in the moonlight, the silver scars on her arm glowing faintly in sympathy with the orb above. She was no longer a girl caught between two worlds. She had chosen her side. She had stepped into the wild, and she would learn its laws or die by them. The choice was made. The old Lily was gone. Forge, as Kael called it, began at dusk the next day. It was a brutal, beautiful dismantling of everything Lily thought she knew. There were no more gentle exercises in filtering scent. Now she had to track a rabbit by its fading trail alone, moving on silent feet, her body low to the ground, learning the grammar of the forest floor, the meaning of a bent blade of grass, the story in a scuffed patch of moss. Her muscles burned, her breath soared in her lungs, but the animal fire inside her burned brighter, relishing the chase. He taught her not to smother her anger, but to weaponize its heat. He would provoke her, stepping into her space, his voice a taunt until the rage erupted. Then, instead of grounding it, he taught her to channel it into a burst of speed, into the power behind a controlled shove against a tree, into the focused intensity that could make a larger predator think twice. Fear is a weapon for the prey, he growled as she panted, sweat slicked and furious after a session. Rage is a tool for the survivor. control the tool. She learned to listen not just for sounds, but for silences, the pause in the bird's song that meant something was passing below. She learned the taste of different waters, which streams were clean and which carried the taint of rot or industry. She learned the language of the wind, which breezes carried news from the mountains and which whispered of intruders in the valley. The human world faded to a distant, blurry painting. Her sleep was the deep, immediate sleep of physical exhaustion. Her food was the simple, hearty meals she could prepare quickly before returning to the woods. She spoke to no one. Her phone died in a drawer. She was becoming a creature of sensation, instinct, and moon-fed strength. Kael was an unforgiving teacher, but a fair one. He pushed her to the edge of her endurance, but never past it. He offered no comfort, only correction. Yet, in the shared silence of a successful stalk, or the nod he gave when she mastered a new skill, she found a grim camaraderie. They were bound by the mark, by this trial, and by the shared enemy whose cloying scent they occasionally caught on the borders, testing the fences. A month passed. The moon waxed full once more. On the night of the full moon, there was no lesson. Kael led her deep into the heart of his territory, to a high, rocky outcrop that looked over the sleeping valley. The town was a distant cluster of fairy lights, silent and impossibly small. Above, the moon hung, a massive, luminous pearl in a velvet sky, its light so bright it cast sharp, black shadows. The pull in Lily's chest was not an ache anymore. It was a resonance, a thrumming harmony. She felt vast, connected to the silver light washing over the world, to the pulse of life in the forest below, to the solid, watchful presence of Kael beside her. "You have learned the steps," he said, his voice quieter than the wind. "You have learned the silence, the chase, the strength. Now you must learn the voice." He turned to face the moon, his profile etched in silver. "The howl is not just a sound, it is a declaration. It says, I am here, this is my place. These are my bones, my breath, my night." He looked at her, his amber eyes holding the moon's reflection. "You have spent this time finding your place. Now claim it." He tilted his head back, his chest expanded, and he let out a sound that was not human. It started low, a rumble from the earth itself, then rose into a long, haunting, beautiful note that seemed to weave through the moonlight. It was loneliness and power, warning and welcome. It was the soul of the wild-given voice. It echoed against the rocks, rolled across the treetops, and poured into the valley. It was the most purely honest thing Lily had ever heard. The sound vibrated in her own ribs, unlocking something deep, something that had been waiting. The last fragment of her human self, the part that feared being monstrous, that clung to silent normalcy, let go. Kael's howl tapered off, leaving a ringing silence that begged to be filled. He nodded to her. Lily turned her face to the moon. She felt its light on her skin, inside her, filling the hollows the human world had left. She felt the silver scars on her arm blaze with sympathetic warmth. She thought of the fear, the confusion, the alley, the goodbye, the aching strength, the silent forest steps, the unwavering choice. She drew breath. Her first sound was hesitant, human adjacent, a trembling note that cracked in the middle. She stopped, embarrassed. Kael said nothing, just waited. She closed her eyes. She didn't try to mimic him. She reached for the resonance inside, the wild joy of the chase, the solid certainty of the soil underfoot, the fierce protectiveness for her new, hard-won self, the sorrow for what was lost, the defiance toward the dangers in the dark. She wrapped it all in the cool, forgiving light of the moon, and she let it out. This time, the sound was clean. It was strong. It rose from her, not a cry of sadness, but a song of arrival. It was her own declaration. It was not the howl of a wolf, but the howl of the marked, a being of two worlds, claiming her right to exist in the one she had chosen. It intertwined with the night, a second thread in the tapestry of sound, answering Kael's call not as an echo, but as a partner. When her breath ended, the silence returned, but it was a different silence. It was a listening silence, a recognised silence. She lowered her head, her body thrumming with the release, her eyes sparkling with unshed tears that were not of grief, but of completion. Kael was watching her, and for the first time, she saw something in his eyes that wasn't sternness, assessment, or duty. It was respect. "Now," he said, the word a quiet rumble in the moon-bathed night. "Now you are ready." Below them, the human world slept on, oblivious. But on the rocky outcrop under the eye of the moon, a bond was sealed not by a claim but by a shared voice. Lily was no longer just marked. She was awake, she was alive, and she was home. Her journey was not over, it was truly, fiercely beginning. The morning after her howl, the world felt different. The resonance of the sound still hummed in Lily's bones, a quiet pride warming her from the inside. She had claimed her place. She walked back toward town as the sun rose, her senses open and calm, no longer overwhelmed but connected. For the first time, the forest felt less like a refuge and more like a home. That feeling shattered when she reached her doorstep. There, placed neatly on the worn welcome mat, was a dead raven. Its neck was twisted at an unnatural angle, its black eyes dull and open. The sight was a cold slap, but it was the smell that truly froze her blood, cloying sweet rot, thick and fresh. Greyborn. Pinned beneath the bird's claw was a small, ragged scrap of dark flannel. Lily didn't need to bring it to her nose. The scent of the pack's leader, that greasy-haired, yellow-eyed man from the alley, saturated the fabric. It wasn't just a threat, it was a calling card. She found Kael already waiting at their training ground, his expression stormy. He'd smelled it too, from miles away. "They heard you," he said without preamble, his voice a low rumble. "Your howl. It was a declaration of strength. To a pack like theirs, that's an invitation." "They left it at my house," Lily whispered, the violation chilling her. "They're not attacking the town," Kael clarified, his amber eyes hard. "They're challenging you personally, the marked human who dares to sound like one of us. They see it as an insult, a pretense." He stepped closer, his gaze drilling into hers. "In our world, a challenge must be answered. If you hide, if you falter, they don't just win. They take everything. My territory, your safety, the peace you're trying to build." The final stage of her training began that afternoon. And it had nothing to do with focus or control. It was about combat. Kael taught her to use her speed not just to run, but to strike. He showed her how her smaller size could be an advantage, how to duck under a swipe, how to use an opponent's momentum against them. She learned to pinpoint the weakest point in a stance. An unstable ankle, an overextended shoulder. "The wolf in you is not for changing shape," he growled as she dodged his lunge, rolling across the pine needles. "It is for sharpening your own. Your senses are your map. Your instinct is your compass. Your fear is your fuel. Burn it." She learned to fight dirty, efficiently, using the terrain, a handful of dirt to the eyes, a sharp crack of a branch against a kneecap. This was not the honourable dueling of stories. This was survival. One evening, exhausted and bruised, she asked, "Why don't they just attack all at once, overwhelm us?" Kael paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "Because this isn't just about territory anymore. It's about pride. Their alpha challenged you. If he can't break you himself, his pack will lose faith. He wants to break you in front of me to prove my claim is worthless." A fierce, proud glint entered his eyes. "But he heard your howl. He knows you're not just a claim anymore. You are my second. And this territory's future rests on your shoulders now." The weight of it was immense, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a purpose. The dead raven wasn't just a threat, it was an acknowledgement. She was in the game. The attack came on a crescent moon night, a sliver of silver in the sky, perfect for shadows and lies. They didn't come to the woods. They went for the one thread still tying Lily to her old world. Sarah. Lily was practicing silent movement near the creek when the wind shifted. It carried a familiar, sugary stench, but mixed with it was something else. The clean, sharp scent of Sarah's perfume, laced with terror. The pull in her chest didn't yank her toward the forest. It shot toward town with the urgency of a lightning strike. She moved faster than she ever had, a blur through the underbrush. They had Sarah cornered in the empty parking lot behind the shuttered grocery store. The Greyborn Alpha and two of his pack had her backed against a chain-link fence. Sarah was trembling, her backpack torn on the ground. "We just want to talk to your friend," the leader was drawling, his voice oily. "Invite her to our little family reunion." Lily didn't shout. She didn't announce herself. She let her rage focus into a cold, silent point. She hit the first pack member from the side, driving her shoulder into his ribs. She heard a satisfying crack as he went down with a grunt. The second lunged, but she'd already seen the shift of his weight. She dropped, sweeping his legs out from under him with a vicious kick. Then she faced the alpha. He smiled, that too wide, toothy grin. The puppy has teeth. He shifted, not fully but enough. His hands became more claw-like, his jaw elongating slightly. This was no longer a man trying to intimidate. This was a wolf ready to fight. He was stronger, heavier. But Lily was faster. She remembered every lesson. When he swiped, she ducked and pivoted, landing a sharp blow to his kidney. When he charged, she used his momentum, shoving him headfirst into the metal fence with a deafening clang. He roared, turning with fury. He caught her arm, claws digging in and through her. She skidded across the asphalt, the pain hot and bright. She could hear Sarah's choked cry. "Your fear is your fuel. Burn it." She burned it. The pain became clarity. The fear became speed. As he lunged for the final pin, she rolled, coming up underneath him. She didn't try to match his strength. She drove her fist, not into his flesh, but into the nerve cluster at the base of his throat, just as Kael had shown her. The alpha gagged, his eyes bulging, his advance crumbling into a stumble. In that second of vulnerability, she was on him. She used her entire body, leveraging his own weight, and slammed him onto his back. She planted a knee on his chest, her hand pinning his clawed wrist to the ground. She leaned in, close enough to see the shock in his yellow eyes. "Leave," she snarled. Her voice was low, layered with a guttural vibration that didn't sound human. It was the voice of the forest, of the mark, of her own hard-won power. "This territory is protected. I am protected, and so are the people in it. Come near any of it again, and I won't let you walk away." The threat hung in the air, absolute. The two other pack members had stumbled to their feet, but they made no move to help their leader. They just watched, their sense soured with defeat and new, wary respect. With a final wrenching shove, Lily released him. The Greyborn Alpha scrambled back, getting to his feet. He didn't speak. He just looked at her, really looked, as if seeing her for the first time. Then he turned and limped into the darkness, his pack following. Silence rushed back in. Lily's body was screaming with adrenaline and pain. She turned. Sarah was staring at her, her face pale, tears cutting clean tracks through the dust on her cheeks. She looked from Lily's glowing, fierce eyes to the silver scars on her arm, now fully visible. "You're..." Sarah's voice broke. "You're not my Lily anymore, are you?" Lily's heart cracked. She walked over slowly, her combat-ready tension melting away. She didn't touch Sarah, just stood before her, offering the truth. "I'm still me," Lily said softly, the growl gone from her voice, leaving only exhaustion and honesty. "Just more. The part of me that loves you, that remembers every secret we ever shared on that park bench, that's still here. It's just not the only part anymore." Sarah searched her face for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. It wasn't understanding. How could it be? But it was acceptance. A bittersweet goodbye to the way things were. "Will you be okay?" Sarah whispered. Lily looked toward the tree line, where she knew Kael was watching from the shadows, having let her fight her own battle. She felt the solid, silent support like a pillar at her back. "Yes," Lily said, and for the first time she truly believed it. "I will." Peace, Lily learned, was not the absence of conflict, but the presence of a hard-won equilibrium. The Greyborn pack did not return. Whispers of their movement suggested they drifted north toward less defended ranges. The challenge had been answered, and the message had been received. This territory was guarded by two wills now, one ancient, one forged new. Lily did not go back to her old life. She couldn't. But she didn't abandon her old world either. She found a small, abandoned forestry service cabin on the very border, where the town's neat lawns frayed into wildflowers and then into the deep woods. It was one room, with a wood stove and a window that faced both ways. She fixed it up herself, her new strength making the work light. From her doorstep, she could see the distant glow of streetlights. From her window, she could see the infinite dark of the trees. It was a life in the borderlands, and it fit her perfectly. Kael was a constant presence, but the nature of their bond had settled, shifting like bedrock after an earthquake. He was no longer her teacher, and she was no longer his burden. They were partners, guardians. Sometimes they patrolled the territory lines in easy silence. Sometimes they sat on her tiny porch as the stars emerged, not needing to speak at all. The claim was still there, the tether in her chest, but it no longer felt like a leash. It felt like a shared heartbeat. One evening, a week before the full moon, he appeared at the edge of her clearing with a young deer slung over his shoulders, a gift and an offering to share. As they prepared the meat, he spoke, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. "My kind, we are made to be alone or to lead a pack. I have always been the former." He glanced at her, his amber eyes reflecting the firelight. "You have shown me there is a third path." She didn't reply, just smiled, the understanding passing between them as clearly as words. She visited her mother, but on her own terms in the daylight. She didn't explain, not fully, but the lies were gone. Her mother saw the calm in her eyes, the new sureness in her posture, and though worry never fully left her face, a quiet pride took its place beside it. On the night of the full moon, Lily didn't go to the high outcrop. She walked to the very edge of her clearing, where the cultivated wildflowers met the true wild. She could hear the distant, joyful noise of the town's autumn festival, laughter, music, the clatter of games. She could also hear the bark of a fox, the rustle of 100 tiny lives in the forest, the wind singing through the pines. The pull in her chest was not a sile. It was a harmony. It was the sound of both melodies playing at once. And her soul was the instrument that could hold them both. She lifted her face to the moon, a perfect luminous disk in a sky dusted with stars. This time her howl was not one of claiming or challenge or even a rival. It was a song of balance, a long, clear, beautiful note that spoke of protection and freedom, of memory and the present moment, of a girl who was marked by the wild but who chose every day what that mark would mean. The sound poured over the sleeping town, a gentle, resonant reminder that magic was real, that monsters could be guardians, and that some protectors wore neither uniform nor fur, but carried the wild quietly in their hearts and silver in their scars. As the last note faded, she felt Kael's presence beside her. He didn't howl in response. He simply stood, a solid, silent silhouette against the moonlit trees, his shoulder brushing hers. Lily looked out at the two worlds stretched before her, the soft lights of home and the deep, calling dark. She was not torn. She was the bridge. She was the balance. She was Lily. She was marked. And finally, completely, she was home. So ends the tale of the girl who was marked and the new life she forged from the claw. Lily found her balance, but her story lives on in the echoes of her howl. Did her journey move you? If you felt the pull of the moon, the sting of the silver scars, or the triumph of a quiet strength claimed back from the dark, leave a comment below. Tell me what moment stayed with you. Was it her final howl? Her goodbye to Sarah? The silent understanding with Kael? Tap that like button if you believe some guardians are born not in light, but in moonlight. It lets me know to keep telling stories that walk the edge between worlds. And follow or subscribe. The forest is deep, and other tales wait in the shadows, of other marks, other moons, other choices yet to be made. Don't miss the next story that calls from beyond the tree line. Until then, listen to the wind. You might just hear an echo of her song. Thank you for walking this path with Lily.